Welcome to the committee, Representative Long. So we have, what do we have? Give me a second to get organized here. House File 1372. I will move House File 1372 to the State Government Finance Committee. If you could please present your bill, Representative Long.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee members. So this bill is pretty straightforward. In Minnesota, we like to think of ourselves as having the best election system in the country, but there are a couple of areas where other states are edging us out, and one of those is in the use of permanent absentee balloting. Right now, any Minnesotan can designate themselves as a permanent absentee voter, and lots do. In fact, 24,397 voters have the permanent absentee indicator marked in their voting record. Permanent absentee is particularly appropriate for students, seniors, people with disabilities, people in rural areas, or working parents. And this is an easy way to show that they would prefer to vote absentee in all elections. Most voters likely expect that when they make this designation, they will automatically be sent ballots as an absentee voter. But in fact, they are automatically sent ballot applications before each election, and they have to go through the extra step of filling out these applications every time. This bill would make a simple change to meet the voters' expectations. When someone uses the current Minnesota permanent absentee process, they would now be mailed a ballot in every election. All the other procedural steps of the permanent absentee process would remain unchanged. This would be much easier on voters. For those who choose to vote from home, this would be an added convenience and would let voters cast their ballot in a way that works for them. It would also streamline the process for counties and cities and reduce administrative and financial burdens. The application step is unnecessary when the voter has already designated that this is their preferred method of voting. Under the bill, the elections administrations would not have to send out applications and receive those applications before fulfilling the voter's preference. This model is currently being used successfully in many other states, including Arizona, Montana, and Utah, to mention a few, and the permanent absentee lists are popular options in these states. The bill is supported by the Minnesota Association of County Officers as well as the League of Minnesota Cities. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Representative Long. I understand we have a slight issue with the effective date since this bill is from last year, and a technical amendment is in order. So Mr. Gehring, I think it might be best to have you just read it so everyone knows how it would read.
Yep, Mr. Chair, so the effective date on page 7 currently provides that the bill is effective January 1 of 2020, and so the proposed oral amendment would be to, on line 7.2, delete January and insert July 1, 2020.
Okay. Yeah, and I know on some of our other bills, we've made this sort of correction to the effective date. Is there any discussion to the amendment, though? I just don't want to catch anyone by surprise. Okay, seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, the amendment carries. I do have one person who has signed up to testify. Yes. If you could please come forward, just identify yourself for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Carrie Sheldon, and I am an election judge, and I do help people with disabilities do voting. But I would like to stress that there is an issue with when people get their ballots, there is a very strong possibility that they are unable to read the ballots and read the instructions on how exactly it's supposed to go, because it has been my experience that absentee ballots have been destroyed because they're unable to read the instructions on how exactly it's supposed to go. My suggestion would be to have house parties like we do now. I've held at least one, and we're going to be doing another one. But those who don't want to have their ballots or don't want to wait for a certain day, they can, just go ahead. But that's kind of that may or may not work, because those ballots may or may not be counted. So I would urge that we try and find a solution, or at least discuss some kind of a solution so that everybody's vote counts.
Thank you, Ms. Sheldon. Is there anyone else who would like to testify on House File 1372? Okay, seeing none, member discussion. Representative Lehman?
Yeah, Mr. Chair and Representative Long, kind of following on what the testifier just said, I think the gist of her testimony was that she's thinking that some people that request ballots probably send back ballots that are ineligible because they weren't able to follow the instructions and so on. So my question is, other states are doing this, and I have a permanent list. Do you have any idea of the ratio of people that request ballots to those that actually end up returning ballots? Any idea what the success ratio is?
Representative Long.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the question. I don't have that data for other states. I do know that voting absentee is a very popular option, and that in this state it's become popular cycle after cycle with more folks participating every cycle. The Secretary of State's office may have more specific information, but in terms of spoilage rates, I don't have that in particular. I know that that is a problem. There are folks who don't know exactly how to fill out the systems we have now, and I think that's in some ways a separate issue from what this bill is trying to address, and certainly one that I would support addressing as well. Is if we move, for example, to a pure early vote system rather than a no excuse absentee voting system, then you would avoid some of the hurdles we have with the double envelope and signature process. But I think this is really just trying to fulfill the intent of voters who have already signed up that they want to be on a permanent absentee list, but may not understand that that requires them to take an extra step every single election to actually get that ballot. I think most folks would assume if you check a box saying, I'm a permanent absentee voter, that means you're going to be receiving a ballot going forward, and that's certainly the intent we're trying to fulfill.
Representative Lehman?
Okay, yeah, okay, Mr. Chair, and Representative Long, maybe, if this does become law, the Secretary of State's office would want to keep track of that success rate to see if this is really an effective method. Okay.
Representative Bonner?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Representative Long. I just wanted to make a personal comment, and thank you for this bill. Our stepson moved in with us a few years ago. He's now currently serving as a decorated member of the Marines down in North Carolina. But a few years back, he moved in with us because, unfortunately, his mother suffered from a stroke. And while the body may not be willing, her mind is mentally as sharp as a tack. And I know that she holds her civic responsibility in great regard. And she is very excited about the upcoming election. And this bill gives her the opportunity to continue to receive those ballots in her assisted living facility where she currently resides. And I know that a lot of members around her have a very similar bend. They are very patriotic and really want to participate. So thank you for making this option available and helping us catch up.
Thank you. Thank you, Representative Bonner. Representative Vogel?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A question, when now that they would be getting a ballot, and I'm not sure how all of the process works, would that list then become public of those people that are on this because they have received a ballot?
Representative Long?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Representative Vogel. Not that I'm aware of. I don't believe anybody's ballot selection is public. I know that the Secretary of State does aggregate data for those who have requested early voting and the like, and I'm sure that would be a part of the aggregate data, but not individually identifiable, no.
Okay. Representative Vogel?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. And maybe if somebody, I'm just not sure, when are you recorded as a voter, I guess is maybe the right question then. Because if you're recorded as a voter when you receive a ballot, then would you be looked at as having voted?
Okay. I do see Ms. Bonowitz coming up. If you could please identify yourself a third time and respond to the question.
Chair, Member Sam Bonowitz, Office of the Secretary of State. You are marked as a voter when your ballot is accepted. So if you're voting absentee, it's when the canvassing board the absentee canvassing board looks through the envelopes and they make sure that everything checks out, you're registered to vote, you're good to go. That's when your ballot is accepted. And we do keep track of accepted absentee ballots, and that information is available. But it's unclear right now if you could get a list of people on the permanent absentee list. That's something that I would have to check with our council with and with the secretary about.
Representative Vogel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I think that answers my question. I guess I didn't know when you were officially counted as voting. When you receive a ballot, or if there's actually a method where you cast the ballot and it's recorded at that point. And I'm gathering that even if I receive an absentee ballot, doesn't mean that I'm counted as voting. It's just if I indeed fill out the ballot and then it's returned. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Vogel. Vice Chair Sauk.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just going to share, I'm on a early voting person list continuously, and I think the county may have just decided to continue the convenience of it for anybody who's getting it, so I automatically get the application, which I agree it'd be nice if that step was out, because that's superfluous for me to fill that out year after year after year. But even for the presidential primary that Minnesota has now, I received the invitation, said here, verify that you exist, go through all the steps. They sent me the ballot, and it was exactly as a normal voting procedure and or a normal voting environment in terms of the paper products and all of that sort of thing. And my sense of when did I vote, I suspect I felt like I had voted when my ballot was counted at the county. So as to the occurrence of voting for my, and I would say that that appears to be authenticated by the way my ballot is then treated, is like if I show up and try to vote again, that first ballot recorded is the one that blockades my ability to try to vote again, and or they have to sort that out according to their rules. But I think that there are mechanisms that essentially step in terms of timeliness and that sort of thing. But I've received my absentee ballot routinely for the last 3 years, I believe. It's 3 years. So I get the invitation and go right through the procedure. Every time it's always the same kind of thing. I do think that there are great improvements as a person who does participate that way. This has got some steps, and the next step that would come in a pragmatic way would be great appreciated also.
Thank you, Representative Sauk. Is there any additional discussion? Okay, seeing none, I will, any closing remarks, Representative Long?
No, I think Representative Sauk summed up nicely what this bill is trying to do, which is, you're one of the 24,000 plus Minnesotans who are taking advantage of this currently, and it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for you to have to go through an extra step every single election. So we're just trying to streamline the process and help the counties and cities out.
Okay. Thank you, Representative Long. With that, I will renew my motion that House File 1372, as amended, be moved to the State Government Finance Division. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Representative Long.
Thank you.